It's 1813 in Copenhagen, Denmark. A gloomy cloud hangs over the city, and in a wealthy merchant's home, a child is born. Little did anyone know that this baby, Søren Kierkegaard, would grow up to become one of history's most provocative and influential thinkers. But what are the dark secrets and family curses that would ultimately shape his destiny? Young Soren grew up in a household shrouded in mystery and melancholy. His father, Michael, was a deeply religious man with a troubled past. Legend has it, as a poor shepherd boy, Michael once cursed God, and this act haunted him for the rest of his life, convinced that his family was going to be doomed to divine punishment. But it gets even worse. Michael believed none of his children would live past the age of 34, the age of Christ at his crucifixion. So one by one, Soren's siblings, they were fulfilling the prophecy. So the pressure was on. Would Soren be next, or could he break the curse? So this oppressive atmosphere, it left its mark on Soren. He grew into becoming a melancholy, anxious young man with a razor-sharp wit and a flair for the dramatic. But beneath the elegant clothes, the sarcastic remarks, there was this storm brewing. And what would it take to break him out of his existential crisis? The answer might surprise you. Enter Regina Olsen, the young woman who captured Kierkegaard's heart. They were engaged to be married, and it seemed like Soren, maybe I'm going to find happiness after all. But in a shocking twist, he broke off the engagement. Why would he do such a thing? Is it a fear of commitment? Was it his family curse? Or is it something far more complex? Kierkegaard's reasoning is going to leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about love and sacrifice. So this heartbreaking decision, it would haunt Kierkegaard for the rest of his life, shaping his philosophy in ways no one could have predicted. But the story doesn't end there. Regina would make a surprising reappearance in Soren's life years later. Now, here's where things get interesting. Kierkegaard didn't just write philosophy. He created an elaborate web of pseudonyms, each with its own personality, perspective. But why go to such lengths? Like, is he hiding something? Or maybe he's hiding someone. So imagine a literary universe where Johannes de Silentio debated with Constantine Constantinus, while Judge William argues with Johannes Climacus. Climacus? It's a philosophical soap opera, but here's the deal. Kierkegaard is actually pulling all the strings behind the scenes. But what was he really trying to say with all these masks? And I think the answer might change the way you see the world. So let's look at the 3 stages of existence, a Kierkegaardian roadmap. First is the aesthetic stage, living for pleasure. Imagine you're at a lavish party. You got champagne in hand, surrounded by beautiful people. It's the Great Gatsby. This is the aesthetic stage, where life is all about maximizing pleasure and avoiding boredom. It's like being stuck in an endless Instagram feed, always chasing the next dopamine hit. But here's the twist. Kierkegaard argues that this lifestyle ultimately leads to despair. Why? Because no matter how many experiences you collect, you'll never find lasting fulfillment. It's like trying to fill a bottomless pit with sand. You might feel temporarily satisfied, but the emptiness always returns. Which leads to stage 2, the ethical stage. So when we're frustrated with the emptiness of the aesthetic stage, we come to the ethical stage. And here you embrace responsibility and duty and moral principles. It's like graduating from party animal to a respected citizen. You've got a steady job, family, white picket fence, and you always return your library books on time. But there's a catch. Kierkegaard warns that even this seemingly virtuous life, it has its pitfalls. Because you might be following all the rules, but are you truly being authentic? Or are you just conforming to society's expectations? The ethical life might bring stability, but it brings a different kind of despair. The fear that you're missing out on something more profound, which is stage 3, the religious stage. In the religious stage is where Kierkegaard believes true authenticity lies. But don't expect some comfortable, easygoing, just show up on a Sunday spirituality. No, this is about making a radical, terrifying leap of faith into the unknown. So imagine standing at the edge of a cliff, unable to see the bottom. That's what Kierkegaard's leap of faith feels like. It's not about blind belief. It's about embracing paradox and uncertainty. It's choosing to believe in something that goes beyond reason, even when it seems absurd. But here's the million-dollar question. Can you make the leap? Can anyone make this leap? And what happens when we do? And Kierkegaard's answer might surprise you and challenge everything you knew about faith. Let's talk about one of Kierkegaard's most famous concepts, anxiety. But we're not talking about your garden variety nervousness here. Now, this is this existential anxiety, and it's a whole different beast. So imagine you're standing on the edge of a tall building. You're perfectly safe, but you feel a strange urge to jump. That vertigo, that mixture of fear and fascination is what Kierkegaard means by anxiety. It is the dizziness of freedom. It's the realization that you have infinite possibilities and that your choices have real consequences. But here's where it gets interesting. Kierkegaard sees anxiety as a good thing. He says it's a sign you're alive. It's a sign you're grappling with the big questions of existence. In fact, he argues that the person who never experiences anxiety is not fully human. So the next time you feel that existential dread creeping in, remember, you're in good company. Embrace the anxiety, because it just might be the key to unlocking your authentic self. And just when you thought Kierkegaard couldn't be more controversial, he decided to take on the entire Danish state church. In his later years, Soren launched a scathing attack on what he saw as the complacent, watered-down Christianity of his day. So picture this, one man, armed only with his pen and his wit, going up against centuries of religious tradition. The stakes couldn't be higher. The very nature of faith itself was on the line, but what drove Kierkegaard to such extremes? Like, how did this battle suddenly change in him and Christianity itself? To understand this, we need to meet one of Kierkegaard's most intriguing characters, the Knight of Faith. And this isn't some medieval crusader, it's his ideal of religious experience, and it's a lot more radical than you think. So imagine a person who has made the leap of faith we talked about earlier. So they've embraced the absurd, they've stared into the abyss of uncertainty, and they've come out on the other side with an unshakable faith. But here's the kicker. From the outside, they look completely ordinary. The Knight of Faith isn't some ascetic monk, it's not a preaching zealot. This could be your neighbor, your coworker, or the person sitting next to you on the bus. And they engage fully with the world, they enjoy life's pleasures, fulfill their duties, but internally, they've made that radical commitment to God. And he uses the biblical story of Abraham to illustrate this concept. Abraham was willing to sacrifice his son Isaac at God's command, displaying an absolute faith that went beyond ethical norms. Yet after the supreme test of faith, Abraham returned home and lived a normal life. This paradox, being fully engaged with the finite world while maintaining an absolute relationship with the infinite, is at the heart of Kierkegaard's religious ideal. But is it actually possible to live this way? And if it is, how would we even recognize a true knight of faith? And these are the questions that continue to puzzle philosophers and theologians to this day. And then in a twist worthy of one of his own novels, Kierkegaard collapsed on the streets in 1855, just shy of his 43rd birthday. He had outlived his father's dreaded prophecy, but at what cost? In his final days, he refused communion from the church he had so fiercely criticized. Was this kind of a last act of rebellion or something more? As Kierkegaard lay dying in the hospital, he made a cryptic statement that has puzzled scholars for generations. What did he mean? And how does it tie together the threads of his life and philosophy? The answer might just blow your mind. However, before we get there, we need to go back to the philosophical showdown. In one corner, we have G.W.F. Hegel, the German idealist philosopher who believed in the power of reason to understand everything. And in the other corner, our Danish existentialist, Søren Kierkegaard, ready to throw a wrench in Hegel's systematic machine. Because Hegel argued that history was progressing towards absolute knowledge, that everything could be understood through rational thought. And Kierkegaard wasn't having any of that. For him, Hegel's system, it was like trying to build a mansion in midair. It might look impressive, but it has no foundation in actual human existence. And he insisted that the most important truths, love, faith, meaning of life, they're not going to be able to be captured in a logical system. They have to be lived. So this clash between system and existence, between objective reason and subjective passion, it's going to set the stage for much of the 20th century philosophy. And who's going to win this intellectual battle? The answer might just change the way you see the world. So here's a little plot twist for you. Kierkegaard, our gloomy Danish philosopher, might just be the original self-help guru. Like long before there was Freud or Jung, Kierkegaard was diving deep into the human psyche, exploring concepts like anxiety, despair, and self-deception. In works like The Concept of Anxiety, Sickness Unto Death, he laid the groundwork for what would later become existential psychology. And he argued that many of our psychological problems stem from our failure to confront the big questions of existence, who we are, why we're here, and how we should live. But unlike modern self-help books that promise easy solutions, he doesn't offer any quick fixes. Instead, he challenges us to embrace our anxiety, face our despair, and take responsibility for our choices. It's like extreme sports for the soul, not for the faint of heart, but potentially life-changing for those brave enough to try. Now, you might think that's the end of the story, but you couldn't be more wrong. Kierkegaard's ideas, they were like philosophical time bombs, ticking away quietly until they exploded onto the scene in the 20th century. From existentialism to postmodernism, from theology to psychology, his influence is everywhere, if you know where to look. But here's the million-dollar question. What would he think of our world today? How would he challenge our assumptions about faith, authenticity, and what it means to truly exist? And more importantly, how can his idea help us navigate the existential crises of our own life? And so as we wrap up our dive into Kierkegaard's world, you might be wondering, why should we care about this eccentric Danish philosopher in the 21st century? Well, in an age of social media and constant connection, his emphasis on individual authenticity is a much-needed wake-up call. His critique of the crowd mentality could easily be applied to today's online echo chambers and cancel culture. Moreover, in a world that often seems obsessed with external success and validation, he reminds us to look inward, grapple with the big questions of existence, and then find meaning beyond the rat race of modern life. But here's the ultimate paradox. The more you study his ideas, the more you realize that studying is simply not enough. He doesn't want passive readers. He wants to provoke you to action, to challenge you to live more authentically and passionately. And so as we come to the end of his life and thought, one thing is clear: his ideas are more relevant than ever. And in a world of endless distractions and superficial connections, he dares us to take a leap of faith, not just in God, but in ourselves and in the terrifying freedom of authentic existence. But be warned, once you start down this path, there's no turning back. You'll question everything you thought you knew about faith, ethics, and what it means to be human. So, are you ready to take the plunge into the depth of incomprehensible suffering? What were those famous last words on his deathbed? My life is great, to others unknown and incomprehensible suffering. Take the leap of faith.